welcome to the EXCELcast. My name is Melissa Coppola, and I am an assistant here at the EXCEL program at SMTD. And today I'm here with Margaret Lioi, who is the CEO of Chamber Music America. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Yeah. Could you tell us more about what you do as the CEO of Chamber Music America?
Well, I love my title, and I always tell my staff that no matter how great your title is, you will still always be putting the envelopes through the postage meter and doing the day-to-day tasks of a nonprofit administrative job. But my role as CEO is a lot of strategic planning, a lot of strategic thinking, working with the board of directors, generating direction for the staff to follow. I answer loads of emails. We're a membership organization, so I hear a lot from our members about things that they need, things that they want, things that would help them in their careers. There's never a dull moment. Every day is different.
That's great. So I know that you do a couple of other things in addition to being the CEO. Are there other roles that you fulfill? I know that you are involved with Sphinx, and can you tell us about that?
Sure. Well, I'm a great fan of the Sphinx organization. Chamber Music America has had a relationship with the organization from its very earliest years, 21 years ago now. In helping to promote and publicize the competition when the organization was just the competition. And later, a few years later, Aaron asked me to be on the advisory board. So I love that role because whenever they have a question about something, Afa or Aaron will ask, you know, and I give the advice, the best advice that I think I can give. And I'm also on the advisory board of the University of Michigan's M Prize, which is a great privilege for me. It's a wonderful, wonderful competition, and I love that it's called Chamber Arts because that sort of encompasses the broad definition of chamber music, which Chamber Music America embodies.
That's great. So exciting. So many different things. So the great thing about the EXCELcast is we bring in professionals from across all different sorts of fields. And the most interesting thing for me to see as one of the hosts is the different kinds of paths to where you where you get to. So I would love to know about your path, because I know that your background is not necessarily in, well, you have an M.B.A. in arts administration.
I do.
But before that, I think you were a pianist.
Yes.
So can you tell us about your path to where you are now?
Well, I went to New England Conservatory and have my master's in piano performance. I am so proud of that because it was so hard, so difficult, so many talented and amazing students. And in my role now, I think the students all across the United States are even more accomplished. I always say, if I had to audition now, I'm sure I wouldn't get in. So I'm happy that I went when I went. And my first love actually was vocal music, but I'm not a singer. I like to sing, but I could never have made my living that way. So I went into vocal accompanying, and I did that for a number of years. And then I got a little weary of the travel, quite honestly, and decided that I always wanted to be in the arts, but I wanted to do something a little different from performing. And I didn't even know what that was, but I happened to be living in Binghamton, New York, of all places, because there's an opera company there, and I was working as an opera accompanist. And I met a woman who was in the arts administration program at SUNY Binghamton, now University of Binghamton, but it's a state university. And I thought she was so accomplished and so articulate. And I thought, that's what I want to be like her. So I applied to the arts administration program and fortunately got in and had a lot of wonderful colleagues in that program as well. And as part of the program, there was an internship that we had to do to graduate. And I did my internship at the Spoleto Festival in Charleston, South Carolina, which was just such a gift for me and led me down this wonderful path of working with amazing administrators and getting some pretty great jobs. I've been so fortunate in my career to work with amazing people. And one led to another, and I've been at Chamber Music America now for 17 years.
Wow, that's great. So it seems like through the experience of your internship, you really expanded your network, and that played a lot into where you are now.
Definitely, it definitely did. And it was for me, it was a seamless way of entering into the workforce, the administrative workforce, because I had only ever studied music. And as an accompanist, I often joke that I could name an opera in 3 notes. I'd hear 3 notes, I'd know exactly what opera it was. But I didn't know, I'd never taken any other subjects in school. I had never taken economics. When I went to business school, it was shocking, actually. I had to take calculus and statistics in the same semester. So needless to say, I got a tutor like on the first day. But that gave me a lot of confidence, actually. The fact that I could get through that program really prepared me well for a lot of the challenges of being a nonprofit administrator.
Yeah, that's great. So in addition to your internship and the experience of being a collaborative pianist, were there any other really impactful experiences that changed your view on what you wanted to do or where you ended up?
Well, I loved working at the Spoleto Festival, but I'm from Rochester, New York. I'm not from the South. And I thought at the time, I was there for 6 years, that I wanted to come back up north and be closer to my family. So I moved to New York. I had always wanted to live in New York City, but I was kind of intimidated by the size and scope of New York City. And when I came to New York, I was so influenced again by the arts administrators that I met that were running huge organizations in this very competitive environment. And I came from the Spoleto Festival to work for a charitable trust, which was a great job to come up to New York for. But I also missed working for an organization that produced art. It's great working for someone who's giving away money because that's very gratifying and it's important work. But I missed the excitement of an opening night, and that made me realize how much I wanted to work for an actual arts nonprofit organization, and also how important it is to work for an organization that supports independent artists. I'm such a fan of musicians and actors and visual artists because they put it all out there, and they need so much support. And so just being around that environment, I think, in my earlier administrative years, really helped me to see how important this kind of work is, even though arts administration is totally behind the scenes. You have to, which actually being, it's interesting you called it a collaborative piano, which I know is what it's called, but when I was doing it, you were an accompanist, and so I still think of it that way. But it actually is perfect because a good collaborative pianist isn't taking the spotlight away.
Yeah.
They're being very supportive, especially with singers. You know, you breathe with them and you can sense how much breath they need, which may help you speed up a phrase or slow down a phrase. And I feel that same kind of thinking in my position at Chamber Music America in helping artists and being behind the scenes, but understanding or trying to understand what it is that they need and providing it at the point that it will be useful for them.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. And it seems like through your career, you've really learned to identify where your values are, and some of them are collaboration. And then I also noticed a trend that part of what plays into where you are now is seeing other people and what they were doing in their careers and how they're supporting the arts.
Yes.
And one of my questions is, could you tell us a little bit about maybe what a mentor that gave you advice or anybody that you saw along the way who offered either criticism or advice and how you implemented it?
You know, I just have been this past weekend at Sphinx Connect, and someone asked me, do you mentor people? And I laughed and said, you know, I could use a mentor myself. I didn't realize as a younger person how one started a relationship with a mentor. And for years, I wanted a mentor and didn't have one. And it is only as I matured and worked more in the administrative field that I realized it's not the responsibility of the mentor to find me among hundreds of very talented people, that it is my responsibility to find someone that I want to model myself after, or someone that I feel I can learn something from, and approach that person. So I was very lucky. I sort of fell into a mentor because I hadn't figured this out yet. But my internship at the Spoleto Festival, I worked for an amazing boss named Charles McKay, who was the director of development, and I was his first ever intern. I'm so proud to say that. And Charles then went on to the Opera Theater of St. Louis and now is the general director of Santa Fe Opera. And he was just a wonderful person to learn from, because to me, he did and continues to do everything right. And he told me something that probably most of these viewers will not understand, so I'll explain. Back in the day, everybody used adding machines. And adding machines are like big noisy things, and they have a tape, a paper roll. And one of the first, he gave me a big finance assignment when I first arrived in preparation for a board meeting. And so, you know, and the adding machine was going crazy. And I kept getting like different totals every time I did it. And, or I think I had given him one total, and then when he did it, he got a different total. And he said to me, you always run at least 2 tapes. And so that doesn't make sense in today's world, but the principle behind it does. And the principle behind it that I grasped was, don't count on the first answer that you get. Make sure when you're doing research, when you're trying to find the answer to something, that you double check it, that you go deeper. Don't just accept the first thing that you're given. And that has served me so well throughout my entire career, especially you know, Chamber Music America does fundraising, and I do a lot of proofreading in my work, particularly with grant proposals. And when I read something that someone has written that might say, 42% of the musicians do this and that. And I always will say, where did you get that number? Where did you get that 42%? Because it's not valid if you don't go deeper, that you've read a study or that another organization claims that. So that advice, I think, I still laugh when I think of run 2 tapes. I still say it. I have to run 2 tapes. Nobody knows really what I'm talking about, but the underlying principle, I think, is really sound.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Sarah, because now we know what you're talking about. So what is next for Chamber Music America? What exciting things are happening?
Well, gosh, Chamber Music America is an organization made up of people. And when I think about what we are doing, I always look to our artist members and see what they are doing. And one of the very exciting trends in chamber music is that, we think of music in categories of classical or jazz. And now, maybe even, for many years, but I think it's really prevalent now, that musicians are playing all kinds of music. They don't like to be categorized. When we, in our membership application, we ask people, what kind of music do you play? And there are little boxes and you can check them. Most people check other, and they write in, I do not like to be categorized. And so we're rethinking, okay, how are we going to ask this? Because we just want to know, what kind of music is being created and performed. But the musicians are so far ahead of everyone. They're incorporating cultural influences, and there's so much social justice music being created and performed now. And I think that, so what's ahead for Chamber Music America is finding ways to support the expanded genres that people are working in, thinking a lot about technology, because technology, the minute we think we are on top of it, we are behind it. And we're always looking for resources ourselves to support upgrades in our own technology. But technology is a huge thing for musicians, how they're distributing their music, how they are promoting their music. So we also are very keen on equitable practices in our grant making, in our conference, who is represented. So I think those are creatively, technologically, and through equitable practices. That's what our focus is on the year ahead.
Wonderful. Well, I think that's all the time we have. So I would just want to take a moment to say thank you again for speaking with us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
And thank you so much for watching. Make sure to tune in next Tuesday for another EXCEL.